It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the Heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on back in to another podcast by George. Well, summer is coming to a close. It will here in a month or two, and it's, bad news. Hate to report it, actually, but the masks are going back on. Now, businesses, by and large, aren't closing, particularly here in the Heartland, but precautions are beginning to being taken. I mean, it's happening, folks, and I got a feeling that it's going to keep rolling. Let's hope that people get vaccinated and we can reopen the way that we were before. But the masks are coming back on. And here in the Heartland, you hear me talk a lot about straight talk, straight from the Heartland. And there's an element of this that I mentioned on a podcast about a year or so ago, and it has to do with what I consider in the sports world, which I'm very interested in, one of the crown jewels here in the Heartland, and it is Prairie Meadows Casino, because of the thoroughbred racetrack that's there, the casino itself, and the large crowd that it draws. And I always wanted to be able, with the podcast, to be able to shine a light on issues and circumstances which I think don't get enough coverage in the mainstream media. And I first encountered this again in the sports world when I was on the board of directors, the vice president of the Des Moines Buccaneers. For years, the Buccaneers were the hottest ticket in town. I mean, they were the hottest ticket in Iowa. We had people coming from all over the state to attend sold-out games down there. People were intensely interested in it, and it got virtually no media coverage. And the way that I used to put it to the mainstream media was, on any given night, more people could be gathered in one place watching the Des Moines Buccaneers than any other place in the entire state. Now, forget about sports if you don't like hockey, and I realize a lot of people don't. How about just covering it from the aspect that the most people are together in one place? Well, that's kind of how I think of Prairie Meadows. I mean, if you look at the Heartland right here in the sweet spot of the country, you swing out a 200-mile radius, on any given night, more people could be gathering at Prairie Meadows racetrack and casino than any other place in the Heartland. So that's kind of my open. That's how I wanted to get started on this, because we've got some news related to the pandemic and Prairie Meadows, and of course, other casinos around the state that we want to talk to our good friend Wes Ericke. And for folks that may not remember from him being on the show before, Wes Ericke is the president and CEO of the Iowa Gaming Association. That's a position that he's held since 2000. Wes is a graduate of Iowa State University. He served on several foundation and professional boards as a director or officer, including the Iowa State Parks Foundation, the Travel Federation of Iowa, the Iowa and American Schools of Association Executives, the Iowa 4-H, the American Gaming Association, and, of course, the ISU Greenlee School of Journalism Advisory Council, which I really like. And Wes has received several honors, including the Leadership for Iowa Award, the ISAE Distinguished Executive Award, and the Iowa 4-H Foundation's highest honor, the Meritorious Award with the 4-H. Like, sometimes I think that's probably the award of which he's most proud. Well, welcome back to a podcast by George.
Great to be back, George. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, that was kind of a long-winded intro, which mine kind are, but that's really where I expel my wind. Most of this now is going to be about you, and I wanted you to comment on this article here that you're all knowledgeable about, and I'll bring this up on screen, and that'll get us started. Okay, so this is an article from the Des Moines Register. The headline reads, "Prairie Meadows Casino and Resort guests will be required to wear masks again starting Sunday." And that's when we're recording this. Now, starting Sunday, Prairie Meadows Casino and Resort will again require that its guests wear face coverings while on its premises. The measure takes effect at 8 a.m. Sunday. Officials say it is a measure to stop the spread of COVID-19 in central Iowa. The Polk County-owned casino, horse racing track, and hotel was closed for 3 months in 2020 because of the pandemic, reopening in June that year with a mask mandate and improved health safety measures in place, including socially distanced attractions, temperature checks, and more hand sanitizing stations. Now, Prairie Meadows lifted its mask requirement in June of 2021. Okay, so that's our starting point here. Let me bring that down off the screen. So, Wes, how effective was this in your, and I know you talked to other operations around the country also. How did Prairie Meadows do?
Well, certainly, let's rewind this back to like March of last year, when we
Yeah.
were all closed, every casino, Prairie Meadows included, for 11 weeks. And really what, the efforts by everyone, and certainly we're talking mostly about Prairie Meadows, we're premier entertainment destinations. And certainly there is a lot of people that come to these to enjoy the many amenities that are being offered at a premier entertainment destination. So when you're closed, you have to look at ways, the protocols, the guidelines, the standards of reopening, getting the CDC, the governor's office, the Department of Public Health to accept what you're doing to give the public the confidence that is indeed to come back. And we attempt to do that in Prairie Meadows certainly last fall, but in a lot of variety of ways. Everybody had a little bit of different combinations. And so by June, the confidence that people were getting vaccinated, and there was that better to come back, and certainly the revenues showed for that. I mean, we went from like 20% down collectively last year to being in the record numbers. I mean, Prairie Meadows included revenue numbers. It was just beyond what it's ever been. And I think a lot of people, there's pent up demand. There was the vaccinations that just a lot of that happened. So now you have this new variant that's entering in that everybody's trying to figure out. And for Prairie Meadows to make the decision, that's a business decision that they're suggesting, trying to have that safety that everyone needs to wear a mask, both employees and guests. I would say this is not every casino is doing that yet. Perhaps that might be the case, but that's where various casinos will have different decisions on how they're approaching that.
So I guess the question is, were the efforts successful? And I think you and I had talked before, and I said that if it's working out there, you probably won't be able to find out from the folks that are going through the casino, because, I mean, there's not contact tracing. You don't really know how they're doing after they leave. But I said it would come through the employees, probably. Was there much transmission of COVID, to your knowledge, in the casinos with the work staff?
I'm not aware that there was, that didn't really, not to the extent that, something gets to the magnified to being reported. Not to say there wasn't some isolated cases here and there, but I think, everyone was focused on sanitization and, just hand washing and wearing the mask and all those things. And if you were feeling sick, you weren't supposed to show up, and taking temperatures and a lot of those things for the employees. And then with the guests having to wear masks for a considerable amount of that time, they get removed in June, and now they're back again. They're as of today. So that's just, I think, the precautions and the standards that they're choosing to try to do to stay ahead of this, so that it doesn't become a problem.
Talk a little bit about the social distancing element of this, because as you mentioned, business is booming. I mean, there are people that are in close proximity. What can you do to mitigate that in a casino? What can be done as far as social distancing is concerned?
Well, they did set up like plexiglass was a primary tool, and to utilize it that way to have them between the slot machines. Sometimes they would space, if you had this machine, you didn't have the one next to it back in the beginning, especially. And then even at the table games, having plexiglass between the table game positions. And when they first opened last year, it was only like 3 positions at a blackjack table instead of the 5 or 6. Craps table, half of what would be allowed. But I think as they started getting more comfortable in ways to have some distancing, but also as more people got vaccinated, I think that helped with that loosening some of those some of those aspects of the social distancing. I think now masking is one of those that when you are in close proximity, I think that was always being said by the Department of Public Health, CDC, if you're in close proximity, you should have a mask on. And so I think that's what they're trying to advocate doing there.
Well, I think it's great that you're kind of taking the initiative, taking the lead in going back to the mask. Now, I got to ask you this, Wes, because as you've seen on the news, myself included, all the way from the halls of Congress on down, there are people that are raising holy hell about wearing these masks, about having to put them on again. Has that been an issue at Prairie Meadows, and do you think it will be now for the second time around going forward?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, it's going in effect, going in effect what the reaction of patrons, and I suppose even like employees I do know that with employees, and that's specific to Prairie Meadows, but collectively, and some of the other casinos, that if an employee had been vaccinated, they could no longer be required to wear a mask. Now that could change. I mean, obviously it is at Prairie Meadows and could be in other places. And with patrons, if they're feeling, hey, I'm vaccinated, I'm okay, that I shouldn't have to wear a mask. I mean, that could be a legitimate issue being raised. But the point is, if this is the policy, if they want to go there, they're going to have to put a mask on again. And, so that's their choice then, whether they want to do that, but that's what's been established as a business decision, by Prairie Meadows. Some others haven't gotten to those mandates yet, and perhaps never will. Maybe it's more of a, just a strong encouragement. I guess we'll just have to see how this Delta variant, continues to emerge and spread, within our state.
Well, I'm just like everybody else. I don't like wearing a mask, but I can tolerate it. And of course, when I go to the racetrack and casino, really what I want to do is win. I don't care if
there you go. Of course.
if I'm wearing a mask or not. I want to have some fun. I want to win. And of course, what I really like, and I've spent some time in casinos, I've played some table games, but what I like is horse racing. And of course, with the horse racing, that's really not an issue. I mean, it's outdoors. And I mean, there is, you can step in if there's a raging thunderstorm or something. But I mean, the mask is not an issue when it comes to watching the horse races, which is what I really like.
Well, that's a good point. You're outside, and I think there is a kind of difference between inside and versus being outside, where there's more fresh air moving around, and there's more chance to be social distance. And so, to your point, but it's all entertainment, certainly, and there's just you're trying to offer a premier entertainment experience for the patrons, given the various circumstances that we're faced with here with getting this crazy COVID under control.
Well, and I again tell everybody I like to gamble. I hate to lose, so I'm always going to be safe. There's no problem with me ever getting in trouble gambling, because I'm never going to put a lot out there, because I'm never going to be at risk at losing a lot, because I hate to lose. Well, there you go. That's the perspective from Prairie Meadows, and I'm a fan, and it doesn't get enough coverage, and I said that at the beginning. I forget about whether or not you like gaming. It's just the fact that it doesn't get enough news coverage from the number of people that are participating and enjoying it. And as far as sports are concerned, and I consider horse racing to be a sport, I mean, the Prairie Meadows racetrack is right up there with the Iowa Cubs. It's up there with the Iowa Wild. I mean, it's AAA stuff. I mean, it's top drawer. I mean, it's not Churchill Downs or Oaklawn or something like that from a historic perspective, but everything else is just as good as anywhere you'll get in the country. And that's something to be said, really, here in the Heartland. Well, Wes, before we let you go, I want to give you a last word on this to kind of bring our audience up to date, give them some advice as they're headed out, maybe coming back into the casino or Prairie Meadows, or what you think about the situation here as we look ahead to the next, few months anyway.
Well, again, it's a premier entertainment destination at our casinos. They have many amenities, whether you like to do horse racing or table games or the casino, or just even going to a fine dining, stay at the hotel. There's just a lot of good things that are connected together in amenities. And so, and the fact that you say that, sometimes this is a best kept secret for some with what the casino does, like what Prairie Meadows does for the community, back with the charitable contributions and the various things like that they do so much. And so for people coming out, now that there's this mask mandate, that's not going to be permanent, I would say. I mean, it's probably it's more of a temporary thing to get through this next phase of this Delta surge. So people have done that before, and they will be required to do that again. But still, hopefully, they can have fun, whether it's whatever their kind of gaming that they like to do is, whether it's the horse races, the table games, or whatever. There are ways to still do that. Spend a few hours and try to win, as you say. So
that always makes it more fun. And I will say this: I want to thank you for your efforts with the Iowa Gaming Association, Wes. And I know you've been at that for a number of years. And also, I just, there's something about the fact that you're taking the initiative on this mask mandate. I mean, it's an organization, it's a group, it's an executive with a heart, folks. Wes, thanks for coming back on a podcast by George.
My pleasure. Anytime, George. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
And folks, if you like getting this update, if you like getting this information again on COVID and the masks and all this news of the day, go to YouTube, go to Podcast by George there. Subscribe, ring our notification bell, give us a thumbs up. Also, if you just want to get it in audio on your car or maybe on your iPhone, go to iTunes, subscribe there. And of course, you can always follow along on Facebook. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.